Philadelphia just gave Eagles fans even more reasons to believe this offense is about to look completely different in 2026. And the biggest sign might actually be coming from Jalen Hurts himself, because for the first time in a long time, it genuinely feels like the quarterback is fully embracing major offensive changes instead of simply adapting to them. That is a massive development when you think about where this team has been offensively over the last couple of years. According to the information coming out of the building, Hurts and new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion have already built strong chemistry early on, and what stands out the most is the type of offense the Eagles are preparing to run. This is not going to be the same predictable look fans complained about at times last season. The expectation now is a heavier under-center attack mixed with much more play action, something Hurts reportedly really likes in this new system. And honestly, when you go back and listen carefully to what Hurts has always said publicly, this actually makes perfect sense. He was never against going under center. The issue was never the formation itself. The issue was whether there was a real strategy behind it. That is why this situation feels different. There is finally a sense that the offense is being built with purpose again. Last season, there were moments where it felt like plays were being called simply to call them. Runs without setup, concepts without sequencing. But now, the early message surrounding Mannion's system is that every formation and every adjustment has intention behind it. That matters for a quarterback like Hurts. Once he trusts the structure and understands why things are happening, he fully buys in. And from everything being said right now, that trust is already forming. At the same time, Eagles fans are starting to notice other details around the team that only add more intrigue heading into training camp. One of the biggest talking points lately has been DeVonta Smith appearing noticeably bulkier in footage released from inside the facility. Some people believe that could point toward an even bigger role in the offense this season, especially with uncertainty continuing to surround the future of another wide receiver on the roster. The speculation keeps growing, particularly after reports that a certain player missed multiple team-related events, including DeVonta Smith's softball game and the Eagles Autism Challenge weekend activities. Meanwhile, another name quietly generating excitement inside the organization is rookie tight end Eli Stowers, and honestly, the praise coming from people around him is getting hard to ignore. Former Eagles receiver Jordan Matthews, now coaching at Vanderbilt, had some incredibly strong comments about the rookie. Matthews basically described Stowers as a future Pro Bowl level talent and emphasized that what separates him is not just athletic ability, but mindset. According to him, Stowers constantly asks questions about improving and wants to understand how to elevate every aspect of his game immediately. That mentality is exactly what the Eagles love. Everybody already sees the athletic traits. The explosiveness is obvious. Matthews even compared the type of explosiveness Stowers has to the way elite tight ends like Travis Kelce separate from defenders. Not necessarily straight line speed, but sudden movement and the ability to create space instantly. Apparently, Stowers dominated in big moments at Vanderbilt, and coaches there genuinely believed defenders simply could not cover him once he planted his foot and exploded out of breaks. Of course, there are still areas of development, especially as a blocker, but the Eagles clearly believe they may have found another dangerous weapon for this offense. And considering how much this new system may rely on versatility, motion, play action, and mismatches, you can already picture how someone like Stowers could become a major factor over the next couple of seasons. Defensively, there is also growing optimism surrounding developmental projects on the roster. One player receiving serious praise internally is Uriah Bernard. Coaches reportedly believe the physical tools are absolutely there, and with Vic Fangio leading the defense alongside defensive line coach Clint Hurt, the Eagles think they can mold him into something special over time. The important thing here is patience. Nobody expects Bernard to become a star immediately, but the organization clearly trusts its developmental structure. Still, despite all the excitement, one major concern continues hovering over this roster, and that is the safety position. Fans remain uneasy about the current depth chart there. Marcus Epps appears to be the projected starter, but there are still questions about whether the Eagles make another move before the season begins. There was even outside speculation connecting Kenny Moore to Philadelphia, although when you look deeper into it, the fit becomes less obvious considering he has barely played safety throughout his career. What makes this conversation interesting is the ongoing debate about whether the Eagles would ever consider moving Cooper DeJean into a more permanent safety role, but internally, it feels like the organization values him far too much in the nickel position to fully commit to that change. His versatility near the line of scrimmage, his ability in run support, and the freedom he gives the defense seem too valuable to sacrifice consistently. And then there is another fascinating storyline emerging around Kelly Ringo. Believe it or not, there are whispers that Ringo could become a trade candidate. The logic behind it is simple. He has size, speed, and athletic upside, but there are concerns about whether his skill set truly fits this defensive system. Some believe another scheme could maximize his strengths better than Philadelphia's current setup. If the Eagles could somehow flip him for a day 3 draft pick, there are people inside league circles who think Howie Roseman would seriously consider it. Speaking of Howie, he once again showed why so many people around the league respect the way he manages contracts. The restructuring of Zach Bond's deal created future flexibility without hurting the team financially right now. It is another example of Philadelphia constantly thinking several moves ahead instead of only focusing on the present season. And finally, Eagles fans are already circling one game on the calendar after the latest NFL schedule leaks suggested Philadelphia will face the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That immediately brought back memories of the Eagles dominating Dallas on Thanksgiving years ago. And with the amount of tension building between these teams again, the atmosphere for that matchup is going to be insane. But when you put everything together, Hurts embracing the new offense, DeVonta Smith looking stronger, Eli Stowers generating huge internal praise, defensive development continuing under Fangio, and major roster decisions still looming, it really feels like this team is entering one of the most important transitions of the Nick Sirianni era. The potential is obvious, but now everybody wants to know if these changes will actually push Philadelphia back toward another championship run. So what do you think, Eagles fans? Is this new offensive direction exactly what the team needed? And do you believe Eli Stowers can really become one of the next breakout stars in Philadelphia? What makes this entire situation even more fascinating is that the Eagles are not acting like a team satisfied with simply being competitive. Everything happening behind the scenes points toward an organization aggressively trying to stay ahead of the rest of the NFL before problems even appear. That mentality starts at the top with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. And honestly, the Eagles Autism Challenge weekend only reinforced that feeling around the franchise. The event itself once again became a massive success, raising over $16 million through thousands of participants and donations worldwide. That kind of support says everything about the culture surrounding this organization right now. Fans, players, coaches, and ownership all seem connected in a way very few franchises can replicate. And inside the building, there is clearly a belief that this current roster still has another level it can reach. That is why the early chemistry between Jalen Hurts and Sean Mannion matters so much. The Eagles know they cannot afford offensive stagnation anymore. Defenses across the league already adjusted to many of the concepts Philadelphia leaned on heavily over the last couple seasons. So now the focus shifts toward unpredictability, balance, and creating easier opportunities for Hurts instead of forcing him to constantly carry everything through improvisation. And the most important detail might actually be the increased commitment to play action. When you combine under center looks with Philadelphia's running threat, it creates stress on linebackers and safeties immediately. Suddenly windows open faster, routes develop cleaner, the quarterback gets defined reads. If this offense executes properly, it could unlock another version of Hurts entirely because it forces defenses to hesitate instead of attacking downhill instantly, like they often did last season. At the same time, this system could create enormous opportunities for players like DeVonta Smith. The reports about Smith bulking up may not seem huge on the surface, but Eagles fans know how important durability and physicality become over a full NFL season. If Smith really is preparing for a heavier workload, that tells you a lot about how this offense may evolve. More motion, more layered concepts, more opportunities to attack intermediate zones instead of relying almost entirely on isolation routes outside the numbers. And then there is the elephant in the room that nobody inside the fan base can stop talking about: the future involving AJ. Brown continues generating speculation, especially after more reports surfaced suggesting his long-term situation remains complicated. Nothing official has happened, but fans are clearly noticing patterns. Missing team-related appearances only fuels more discussion, and whether people want to admit it or not, the possibility of major changes eventually coming to the receiver room feels more real than it did months ago. If that ever happens, it would make the development of younger offensive weapons absolutely critical. That is one reason why the excitement around Eli Stowers keeps growing. Coaches and former teammates are not talking about him like a normal rookie project. They are talking about him like someone capable of becoming a legitimate offensive centerpiece in the future. And what what really jumps out is the maturity everyone keeps mentioning. Jordan Matthews reportedly emphasized that Stowers is completely unfazed by pressure situations. That matters in Philadelphia more than almost anywhere else. Fans here can instantly tell when players embrace the moment versus when players shrink from it. According to Matthews, Stowers consistently delivered during Vanderbilt's biggest games and immediately started searching for ways to improve after arriving in the NFL instead of feeling satisfied with what he already accomplished. That mentality fits perfectly with the culture Philadelphia wants to maintain. The Eagles do not just want talented players anymore. They want obsessive workers, players who constantly search for edges, players willing to accept coaching. That is exactly why the organization feels so confident about developmental prospects like Uriah Bernard as well. Physically, Bernard apparently has every tool coaches could want: explosiveness, violence at the point of attack, raw upside. The key will be patience and coaching. But one thing that keeps standing out is how much belief defensive line coach Clint Hurt has in him. There is a growing feeling inside league circles that Hurt may eventually become one of the most important defensive coaches in the entire organization, especially whenever Vic Fangio eventually decides to step away from coaching. And honestly, that succession plan may already quietly exist internally. There are people who genuinely believe Hurt is being groomed for a bigger future role within the defensive staff. Considering Fangio's age and reputation, it would make sense for the Eagles to already think ahead there. Philadelphia has become extremely proactive when it comes to protecting continuity. Still, even with all the optimism, the safety concern refuses to disappear. That position remains the one area where fans continue feeling uneasy heading toward camp. The Eagles clearly trust some of their internal options more than outsiders do, but it would not be surprising at all if Howie Roseman eventually adds another veteran piece for depth purposes. The interesting part is how many different directions the Eagles could take strategically if they wanted to. There are still ongoing discussions about whether Cooper DeJean could handle expanded responsibilities deeper in coverage at times, but internally the organization appears to value his versatility near the nickel spot far too much. In today's NFL, that hybrid role is almost becoming more valuable than traditional safety play because offenses constantly attack the middle of the field with speed and motion. Meanwhile, the possibility of Kelee Ringo being moved